South Pacific Region, 1944. World War II is in full swing. A U.S. Marine reconnaissance team, including Corporal Allison, disembarks from a submarine. However, they are spotted by Japanese forces, who open fire. The captain of the submarine decides to dive, leaving the recon team stranded on the surface. Allison manages to reach an inflatable raft. After several days adrift, he washes ashore on a small island called Tuasiva. As he explores the island, he discovers several wooden structures and comes across a chapel. Inside, Allison meets the island's sole resident, Sister Angela. The nun explains that there are no Japanese troops on the island, which brings great relief to the soldier. She tells him that she arrived on Tuasiva by ship with others to retrieve a priest who had been serving alone on the island. However, the elderly clergyman refused to leave, and Angela chose to stay with him, even after the rest of the crew departed. A few days later, the priest died of a heart attack, leaving Angela completely alone. In return, Corporal Allison shares his own story of how fate and ocean currents brought him to Tuasiva. As a seasoned Marine, he helps the nun gather fruit as her supplies are nearly depleted. Allison sets out to catch a large sea turtle. Although the creature initially drags him underwater, he manages to catch it with Angela's help and prepares a hearty turtle soup. Upon learning that Fiji is about 300 miles away, Allison suggests a risky journey on a homemade raft. Angela agrees. She sews a sail from palm leaves while the corporal crafts a rudder. Allison confesses that he grew up in an orphanage where he studied the Holy Scriptures, though he never felt close to God. As a teenager, he ran away and joined the military, determined to become a Marine. Angela also opens up. She had a difficult past. Allison is surprised when she starts making jokes and smiling, as he has never seen a nun with a sense of humor before. He begins to believe Angela is one of the most beautiful women he's ever met. Unexpectedly, a Japanese reconnaissance plane flies over the island, forcing the two to hide under a large palm leaf. The next morning, enemy bombers arrive and destroy the chapel, Allison's raft, and most of the fruit trees. Soon, Japanese forces land on the island, forcing Allison and Angela to take refuge in a cave. Angela wants to surrender so that the soldier won't be put at further risk, but he forbids her to do so, convinced the enemy might do something terrible to her. With their supplies depleted, the corporal heads to the shore to catch fish. He narrowly avoids being seen by the Japanese and hides among the rocks. He returns to the cave with fresh fish and starts eating it raw, but Sister Angela cannot bring herself to do the same. Allison then takes a serious risk. He covers himself in mud and sneaks into the Japanese camp at dusk. He finds their food supplies and fills his backpack with canned goods. Just as he's about to escape, a Japanese soldier enters, forcing the corporal to hide and wait for several hours. Angela becomes very worried, as Allison didn't say where he was going. He waits until the morning roll call of the Japanese troops to sneak out of the supply tent and return to the cave. Hearing gunshots, the Japanese are hunting a wild boar. Angela fears that her companion has been killed and decides to surrender. But just in time, Allison returns with the food and stops her. The sister confesses that she was terribly worried about him, and the corporal promises never to leave her alone without warning again. Allison gives her a beautiful flower and a handmade comb. The nun thanks him, though she jokes that, with her short haircut, the comb might not be very useful. The corporal admits he doesn't understand the point of becoming a nun and giving up all earthly joys. The sister replies that it was a deliberate and conscious decision. She became a novice nearly 5 years ago, and in a month she's supposed to take her final vows and say goodbye to the outside world forever. That night, the two watch a fierce naval battle unfold in the distance. In the morning, the Japanese suddenly abandon the island, leaving most of their supplies untouched. Allison and Angela dance with joy. They are convinced the enemy has been pushed back, and that Allied forces will soon arrive on Tuasiva. Unexpectedly, the corporal asks the sister not to take her final vows. He confesses his love for her and proposes marriage, but the nun gently refuses, explaining that she has already given her heart to God and will serve him for the rest of her life. The corporal is deeply saddened by her refusal and asks her to forget what he said, assuring her he meant no harm. That evening, overwhelmed by emotions, Allison drinks Japanese sake and once again declares that, in his opinion, devotion to religious vows is meaningless. He's convinced that they've ended up on this island like Adam and Eve, in a paradise, and that it's time to reconsider their views on life. His words deeply wound the sister. She begins to cry. Allison tries to comfort her, to hug her, but she pulls away and runs into the jungle under a heavy downpour. There, she lies down on the wet ground and falls asleep. At dawn, a sobered-up Allison finds the exhausted nun shivering from the cold. He begs her forgiveness for the previous night, picks her up in his arms, and hurries back to the camp. But the Japanese ships unexpectedly return to Tuasiva, so the two are once again forced to hide in the cave. Angela becomes severely feverish. The corporal covers her with his shirt and, risking his life, heads to the enemy camp. Fortunately, all the Japanese soldiers are distracted by a sword-fighting match between their comrades, allowing Allison to sneak unnoticed into one of the tents. Suddenly, an enemy soldier enters. The corporal manages to silently neutralize him. He grabs a few blankets, tosses the body into the sea, and rushes back to the cave. 2 days pass before Angela finally starts to feel much better. She thanks the corporal for his help, but he insists the blame is his alone. The sister explains that she didn't run away from him. She always knew he would never hurt her. She ran from herself, because in Allison's words, there was indeed a grain of truth. Soon, the Japanese discover the body of their comrade and begin burning the vegetation on the island to flush out any enemies. They slowly draw closer to the cave. The two prepare for what seems like inevitable death, but suddenly, powerful bomb explosions are heard. Allison steps out of the cave and, to his great relief, sees Allied aircraft bombing the island. As an experienced Marine, he understands that a landing will begin at dawn, but he also knows that half his comrades might die, because 4 enemy howitzers are still operational on the island. Realizing that the Japanese are now hiding in bunkers to avoid the bombardment, Allison makes a desperate decision. He sneaks to the artillery, removes the breech blocks, and throws them into the sea. The corporal is wounded by shrapnel, but he doesn't stop. He completes the critical mission and returns to Angela. The sister helps stop the bleeding. At that moment, the Allied landing begins. Allison bids a warm farewell to the nun, realizing he may never see her again. He accepts her decision to take her vows, but to him, she will always remain someone truly special. The sister reciprocates, adding that no matter how many miles separate them, Allison will always be close, in her heart. The Allied forces land on the island with almost no losses, surprised to find the enemy howitzers disabled. Medics bandage the corporal's wound and carry him onto a ship, while Angela walks beside her companion.